I can't believe I'm here filming a review for a cologne. But is it really? Hello, welcome back to Seldomly Off, and I'm Daniel. Today we're talking fragrances, and this is a practical review of Rochas, Mustache Eau de Parfum. These reviews are for fragrances that I have a lot of experience with, multiple wears and mixed situations, and I'm meant to give you a general idea what it feels to wear the fragrance. As per usual, I do a lot of research before buying fragrances, but I really like to go into details about notes and accords, as I don't think that they help the end user. I'd rather talk about the wear experience as a whole. Yes, you've heard it right, Mr. Nichehead here is finally reviewing a cheapie. Rochas Mustache EDP is by far one of the more popular ones from the Rochas brand, and it's actually also one of the best sellers in modern fragrance space. The popularity, the immense popularity of this fragrance all comes down to one thing: the incredible bang for buck this thing offers. For the insanely low price of 25 to 30 bucks, you get an amazing fragrance with incredible performance. It lasts super long, it smells very good, and just in general defies the laws of marketing and profit. How is this even possible? Anyone that has been following me for any length of time might be really surprised of me owning this, let alone me reviewing this. Why do I even have this? I have to admit that Rochas Mustache EDP does definitely not fit my preferred scent profile. This is a very perfumey perfume, very much a smell good fragrance. It's incredibly simple and very functional. It basically represents the epitome of a dumb reach fragrance that can be worn in literally any situation by pretty much anyone. So why did I end up getting this? I too have to admit that I was seduced by the very low asking price for this fragrance, and just by the incredibly good feedback that this gets online, both on Parfum Fragrantica and on YouTube. This appears to be one of the best bang for buck fragrances out there, and I can absolutely confirm that statement. This also appears to be one of the best clones for YSL's Tuxedo, a fragrance that not only is 10 times the price of this, but is also part of an exclusive private line from a designer. YSL's Tuxedo is highly regarded as one of the best men's fragrances out there, especially for a more youthful audience, especially in modern fragcom. It's very long lasting, it's very beautiful, very alluring, and it often lands in top sexy lists for whatever that matters. And you're telling me that this measly clone is meant to compete with that? Yes, and then some. But back to my reasons for purchasing this. A lot of you guys have been asking me for a full review of YSL's Tuxedo, but that fragrance has been a little bit too expensive, especially considering the interest or lack of thereof towards that fragrance specifically. And I wasn't really up to spending about 200 bucks for 75 ml for a fragrance that I kind of knew wasn't really fitting my scent profile or my needs. And seemingly out of the blue, while shopping for other stuff, a promo for this just lands under my eyes. And at that moment, I just happened to need a shopping cart filler to reach free shipping. So I just pulled the trigger and I figured I would do a review. Worst case scenario, I would just give it away to someone. Quickly going back to this being a clone fragrance, you may know my stance on the subject. I'm very much against clone fragrances. I just don't like the idea of someone stealing a fragrance formula and just reselling it at a cheaper price. To me, this really represents a theft of intellectual property, and I regard it as one of the worst things one can do, because ideas, creativity, ability to communicate is what makes us human, and stealing that away without giving credit is just a shameful act in my opinion. That being said, given that this is my general stance, you guys in the comments have made excellent arguments in favor of clones and just in favor of doing whatever the hell you want in a free market. I fully respect you guys' opinions, and I do really thank you for your input, because it was definitely food for thought. This is a complex subject, and I'm not necessarily in the mood to put out a sensationalist claim or a controversial take in this review. All I can say is that the subject of cloning is very difficult to tackle, and many people have a lot of biases. Case in point, I have a little bit of a hypocritical take on this, meaning that I'm very much against these cheap Middle Eastern houses that come and take property. In the case of Mustache EDP by Rochas, a house that has been on the market for nearly a century, I'm a little bit more flexible, I'm a little bit more lenient. Why is this? I'm not really sure. Maybe I'm doing mental gymnastics here, but in a way, I think that Rochas has earned their right to put out whatever they want just because they've been in the game for so long. Also, we have to absolutely consider that the Mustache brand has been established in 1949 when the first fragrances with this brand and this bottle design came out. And the first ones to come out were the EDT, the cologne, and the aftershave. And I wasn't even aware of this. I had to go research it because I thought it was a blatant copy of Tuxedo, which actually came out in 2015. The EDP version of Mustache is obviously and clearly inspired by Tuxedo, and this one here came out 3 years after that. But is it just a coincidence? Is he even a clone at this point? I mean, This is a very difficult thing to say. Ultimately, given how extremely close this is to Tuxedo, this is clearly an inspired fragrance and clearly a clone. It doesn't really matter because this fragrance is awesome and the price to performance ratio is absolutely off the charts. So we'll take it at that and we're gonna just enjoy the scent for what it is. Also, I almost forgot to mention that in preparation for this review, I actually got a sample of Tuxedo, wore it multiple times to really pinpoint the differences and to give you a fair comparison. Hilariously enough, this sample almost cost as much as a bottle of the Rochas. All this intro aside, what even is Rochas Mustache DP and is it worth the hype? Basically, to me, this represents the perfect daily wear. It's cheap, it's functional, it's appealing, it's long-lasting, it performs great, it smells great, it's super youthful, anyone can wear it in pretty much any situation, and it's just an overall amazing scent. Again, I can't get over the amazing value for money, especially considering the incredible wear experience of this fragrance. But we're going to talk about the scent profile after we cover the presentation. Presentation-wise, Rochas as a brand is a little bit all over the place, and it's weird because they've been on the market for such a long time, but they have such a bad brand identity. All the bottles just look different. They feel that they've been designed by different people at a different time, not even following a brief. They feel good in hand, and we'll get to that in a sec. But again, they kind of look cheap, and it is in effect an economical brand, so there's not really much we can complain about. When it comes to the presentation of Mustache DP, I'm again incredibly surprised because at the very low price of 25 to 30 bucks, not only we get an amazing fragrance, but the bottle is incredibly substantial. It feels very, very well made. It's heavy. It feels solid. This is a brick. And actually, maybe also due to the higher liquid content, holding up this fragrance bottle for the review for a long time is tiring my arm, tiring my shoulder. The cap from Mustache DP is metal, is solid, is heavy. It also features an engraving on the top with a logo. It's incredibly well made and it snaps on the bottle very securely. You can even pick up this absolute brick from the cap. It's absolutely amazing, especially for the price. The atomizer is also way above average, again, especially considering the price. Let's give this a couple sprays. This is an amazing fragrance, by the way. I've been wearing it as the scent of the day, just spraying the hell out of it just because it's so cheap, it's so likable, and I don't get compliments as I always say, but this is very, very pleasing, very standard smelling. It's absolutely mass appealing. You can wear this anywhere, everywhere, as I said, at any time of the day, but we're gonna talk about that later down the road. The bottle is definitely the highlight of the presentation. It's, again, a brick. It feels incredibly heavy, feels incredibly well made. I really like the rib design. It's classy, it's vintage, it hides fingerprints incredibly well, and I overall have zero complaints. What I do have complaints about is the sticker here. Not only it feels a little bit cheaply stuck on, but the color is absolutely horrendous. It feels like one of those default reds. It's just so unimaginative. Also, the font feels incredibly cheap and childish. It feels like something that has been designed in Microsoft Word art. Yes, I'm old, and if you know what that is, you're old too. And I know some of you behind the screen, they're yelling at me that this is an established brand, and even the bottle from 1949 feature the same font and same look. And to that I say, yes, in a way, but it's also not a good justification. It was bad then, it's bad now. This red makes it especially bad. This all being said, I'm absolutely aware that I'm nitpicking the hell out of this bottle, especially for the price. Given the asking price, this is basically a miracle. This tramples over most designers, even high-end designers at that, even some niche products. I have absolutely no idea how they managed to put something this high quality together on the market at this price point. To me, this is basically magic. But it's finally time to dive into the scent profile. What does Rochas Mustache DP, and by extent YSL Tuxedo, actually smell like? This portion of the video will be pretty short given how simple and straightforward these two fragrances are. There's not much in terms of complexity, evolution, or transition. These are just very simple, mass appealing scents which can be worn in pretty much any situation, and they're perfectly for that. Now, I'm surprised that the Mustache DP smells even as close as Tuxedo as it does. To put it simply, I would probably categorize these two as very creamy, sweet, modern fougere fragrances, as they have a very distinct lavender note that basically dominates the whole fragrance, the whole wear experience. On the top of these fragrances, especially in the opening, you can easily detect some citruses. The citruses in here are a little bit synthetic. They're not necessarily realistic. They smell sweet, they smell zingy, they smell effervescent, and they're meant to give the fragrance a little bit more lift than you would expect. These fragrances are actually very, very wearable in pretty much every situation, as I said before. They live mostly in the mid-tone of the tonal range, and they offer incredible versatility overall. In the mid-tone of these fragrances, you find that mild lavender note that I was talking about. It comes across as clean, soapy, and definitely elegant. It beautifully blends in with the top notes of the citrus, and it really extends down below with the warm vanillas and ambers. In the base, as I just mentioned, you get a lot of warmth, a lot of sweetness, you get a lot of roundness. And these sweet vanilla notes just round everything off and kind of serve as a blanket to just muffle everything and make it a little bit more smooth. These are not complex scents by any stretch of the imagination. There's not many layers, there's not much to pick apart. Yes, there's definitely other notes and ingredients in here, but I'm not really interested in that because these come across more as a unified wave of smell that is not necessarily meant to be deciphered. They don't smell thin, they don't smell cheap. Actually, I'm really impressed, especially with the Mustache, because it smells high quality in a way. Again, for the price, I'm super surprised. The wear experience in general for these two is incredibly positive. These are both very stable, very predictable scents. They're not fatiguing, they're not cloying, they're not distracting. These two just come across as very well put together, very well designed. Yes, maybe Tuxedo was first, maybe Rochas copied, but who cares, because at a tenth of the price, Mustache EDP is absolutely incredible. Speaking of the differences between these two, I have to first and foremost say that these smell very close. If I were to estimate, I would say that the Rochas smells basically 90% the Tuxedo. Yes, the Tuxedo smells better. This comes across as smoother, a little bit more higher quality, and it definitely lacks a synthetic note, which is easily detectable in the Rochas. This synthetic note in here, maybe it's YSL Super, maybe ambroxan, maybe some sort of an amber wood, but it comes across as a little bit screechy, it comes across as a little bit empty volume-ish, and it kind of reminds me of other designer fragrances or maybe even cheap entry-level niches. And by cheap, I don't mean by price, but actually by manufacturer. It smells a little bit like the synthetic note in the initial perfumes, and it might be me, I might be anosmic to it, I might be overly sensitive to it, but I can easily detect the difference between the two. The Tuxedo smells a lot more well designed, a lot more well put together. Unfortunately though, Tuxedo has a way worse longevity than the Rochas. The Rochas is easily a 6 to 8 hour scent, while Tuxedo basically is like a 4-hour scent. And when the Rochas hits the dry down and becomes a skin scent, Tuxedo is basically already gone. I have to say that in both phases of the dry down, in both skin scent phases, these smell remarkably similar. Basically, they're undecipherable one from another. This sort of synthetic screechiness is definitely more apparent and noticeable in the very first opening down to the mid dry down. Speaking of opening, the citruses in the Tuxedo come across as a little bit more refined, a little bit more realistic in a way. They're not super detectable because these two scents are very well mixed, not blended per se, because I don't necessarily like the word blended, but they come across as very homogeneous, and you can't really detect the notes, you can't really pick them apart. So the citruses, again, they come across as a little bit more higher quality than the Tuxedo, but not by much. And they're gone by basically half an hour in, so it's not really important. And again, all considered, I can't stress enough how incredibly impressed I am by the Mustache, especially considering the price. Time to talk about some practicalities, and here Rochas Mustache EDP absolutely excels. Let's start off with performance. Longevity, as I said, is more than adequate, especially for a scent of this profile. It lasts easily 8 hours, a full workday. It's easily detectable even in the deep dry down, just because it's so creamy, it's so smooth, it's so sweet, but not overly so. This is definitely not a gourmand scent. It comes across as very well put together. Again, super well designed. Projection is pretty mild, especially considering that this and Tuxedo are more meant to be subtle and elegant scents. This one definitely projects more than Tuxedo though. Maybe it's that synthetic note. If you're into projection, Mustache is even better than Tuxedo in that regard. The overall projection curve is nothing to write home about, but it's well tailored. There's no sudden drops, no jarring transitions. It's okay. It's not the best wear experience because it could be a little bit more linear, it could be a little bit more predictable, but we're not complaining. Again, the price is incredible. When it comes to actual versatility in use cases, Mustache EDP and by extension Tuxedo are basically in a league of their own. This is one of the more versatile fragrances that I've ever smelled. You can pretty much wear this in any situation, any season, day to night, elegant to casual, even to the gym. This works absolutely everywhere. Office, no problem. Day-to-day activities, absolutely perfect. Gym, okay. Date, amazing. Party, great. And even when it comes to demographics, despite it being marketed towards men with a name like Mustache EDP, this comes across as very, very unisex. It has very beautiful soft sweetness in the bottom, very subtle florals, a nice citrusy top. It's just overall super wearable. Age-wise also, this is incredibly universal. You can start wearing this in your teens down to the wheelchair. Price-wise, it's also very, very encouraging to our more youthful market because you don't need to spend a lot of money to smell good. This is absolutely amazing. It's pretty much blind buy safe. When it comes to imagery and narration, the conversation from Mustache EDP will be incredibly brief. Basically, it has none. Zero, zip, nada. There's no narration to be seen. This is a very perfumey perfume, a very functional perfume at that. It wears linear, there's no transition, there's no story, there's no image, there's nothing. It's simple, it's direct, it's made to be worn every day and in any situation, and it perfectly excels at that. All right, we're at the part of the video where I give you some options for my review fragrance. In the case of Rochas Mustache EDP, I really wanted to go for fun, youthful, easygoing, pretty much every day, every situation sort of fragrances. The first one that I want to showcase is Kajal Homme II. I have to confess that this is definitely not one of my favorite fragrances by any stretch of the imagination. It just comes across as very youthful, very fresh, very fruity, floral. It's very, very simple. I don't wear this. I don't like wearing this just because it doesn't really transport me anywhere. It doesn't tell me anything. It's incredibly straightforward. It also lacks a little bit of the elegance of Mustache EDP, as crazy as it sounds. That is way more my style. It's way more my age. This is fun, fresh, relatively long lasting, perfectly suited for summer. I really can't fault the scent profile as a whole, but there's something that just doesn't compel me to wear it. I don't know what it is. There's also a little bit of a synthetic note that bothers me. Maybe again, it's one of those notes that I might be anosmic to, but it smells a little bit thin. And it might be by design, it might be the freshness of the scent, but I'm not necessarily in the mood to wear this. Despite that, I have worn this quite a bit, more in casual environments. I have worn this to the gym, to the office, during my day-to-day activities. It's inoffensive, it's mass appealing, it's very, very likable, a little bit uneventful, but I really can't fault the scent profile, as I said before. Also, this is pretty affordable. You can easily find this at discounters, 80 to 100 bucks. And considering the high quality of Kajal, top tier presentation, and just overall very good performance and longevity, this is a pretty safe buy. Again, it's really not my preferred scent profile, it's really not my style of fragrance, but for what it is, I really can't knock it. This works exceptionally well. My second fragrance option has been quite requested by some of you guys in the comments. This one here is Brioni Eau de Parfum Intense. This has been a really nice surprise at a very decent price. I got this for about 80-ish bucks and it's been a pleasure. I'm not really familiar with the house of Brioni, but I heard great things. I got this relatively recently at the start of the year, and I got it because, first of all, because of the perfumer. This is by Karimi Transpended, which is basically one of my favorite perfumers ever. And also because, again, it got a lot of praise online, both on Parfum, Fragrantica, and on YouTube. A lot of people seem to be recommending this scent. The notes also seem quite interesting. There's green apple, there was oud. The reality is that this is a very modern, very likable, very mass appealing sort of scent profile. It has a little bit of a screechy component, maybe due to some sort of synthetic, maybe again Isoe Super, Ambroxan, or some sort of an amber wood. But it smells a little bit like Mustache EDP. It smells a little bit like Dior Sauvage. It has this very empty volume sort of smell. It's pleasant. I have to admit that I do enjoy wearing this, although it doesn't really require much thought. It's very, very mass appealing, very, very easy. The oud in here is barely detectable. There's almost no oud, no real oud at that. It doesn't smell like oud at all. There's a hint of woodiness, but overall, this is a relatively fresh, fruity fragrance that's a little bit adult, very, very modern. Again, it fits right into kind of the rest of the adultish blue daily wear type of fragrances. Once again, it's simple, but I really can't fault the concept. It's mass appealing, it's very likable, it's an easy wear, presentation is great, the cap is magnetic, everything works well, the price is right. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because it's by Karimi Transpended and I do hold her to high regard, but overall, again, Brioni seems to be a very solid house, especially given the mid-range price. I'm really curious to smell the other ones. Maybe the intense version has the synthetic compound that the other ones don't. The other ones sound a little bit more mature. This one definitely goes for a more useful audience. Pretty much Good for everyone, good for any age group, very, very functional. This could be easily a signature scent year round. It's nowhere near as heavy as people say it is. I'll be definitely giving this a lot of wears in the spring and the upcoming summer months. My last fragrance option is my usual oddball. This one definitely falls out of range, both in price and scent profile. It's still very fun and likable though. We're talking about Gritti's Supernova. This is by no stretch of the imagination a unique fragrance. It's heavily inspired by stuff like Ganymede. It smells actually remarkably similar to Ganymede. It's a little bit more green, a little bit more fresh, a little bit more mentholated, but it has that distinct air conditioning sort of smell, has the distinct synthetic smell. Well, intentionally synthetic at that. I've referred to the other fragrances that I've talked about as synthetic, but that is more of a compound. The synthetic aspect in this is more of a smell meant to depict a metallic and sterile type of environment, very space inspired, again, similarly to Ganymede. This one here is also called Supernova, by the way. They're not really trying to hide the inspiration. I do prefer Ganymede to this, mainly for the fact that it was the first one to come out with that sort of idea. This one here is also more expensive than Ganymede, so I see no reason to buy this instead of Ganymede, unless you are a huge fan of Gritti, unless you want this sort of bottle style. It's also 100 ml. Again, the differences between the two are very, very minor. It's still fun, it's still super cool. It still has that synthetic, very artificial, very imaginative touch to it. But I just don't think that the addition or the elevation of this green note is worth the price difference. Overall though, this scent profile and the one of Ganymede are super functional, super wearable in pretty much every type of environment, in any situation, every season. They're definitely signature scent worthy. And surprisingly, despite coming across as synthetic, screechy, pungent, and a little bit sharp when smelled up close, in the air around you, these gather incredibly good feedback. I don't know, you just come across as clean, put together, very, very professional in a very effortless way. Both Supernova and Ganymede are amazing additions to anyone's portfolio of fragrances. They're just such amazing daily wears. But back to Rochas Mustache EDP for my final recommendations and overview. I honestly don't have much to say other than what I have said already. This is basically blind buy proof. It's such an easy recommendation for any one of you guys that are looking for a very functional fragrance, a day-to-day wear, a dumb reach scent in that regard, something that is cheap that you can just spray on without thinking about it too much, which is still high quality, it smells classy, and it smells elegant, and it will still give you the best impression possible out in the public. This is such a good fragrance. I can't stress enough how surprised I am of the quality of this, given the price, and just blown away. And despite being fully aware that there are other really good cheap fragrances out there, especially among the clones, I never expected to get such a good combination of presentation, scent profile, and overall amazing wear experience. Just to close us off, Rochas Mustache EDP is such an amazing value, such an easy recommendation. It's also an easy blind buy. And this just goes to show you that out there's so much stuff to be discovered, so much stuff to be purchased without spending an absolute fortune. If you like this type of content, if you like my approach to video, feel free to subscribe. It's always massively appreciated and it helps the channel. If you want to interact with me, leave a comment, suggestion, opinion, or anything else down below. I always reply and I always keep the conversation open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. Many more fun videos to come as per usual. See you in the next one and cheers.